what should athletes be eating after a game? And I remember in my bodybuilding days, I would work out. And then, so I know it's different between a game and a workout, but I remember doing a workout and then as fast as I could speed walking to my backpack and drinking my protein shakes because I thought that anabolic window was, I needed to get that protein right away.
I know, it's so funny. So I will say the post-workout and the post-game aren't that dissimilar. It's the short change is it's carbs and protein, right? That's the big game. The metabolic window or the anabolic window, as it's referred to in the weightlifting bodybuilding world, is a bit over-exaggerated. It is true that if you eat something with protein and carbs within 2 hours of training, your muscle recovery is significantly better than 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 30 minutes, 1 hour, and 2 hours are almost indistinguishable unless you're running mega doses of steroids, which is where the bodybuilders get that from. That's not for natural athletes. And so if you're a bodybuilder and you're taking a whole bunch of tren, then yeah, I mean, protein it up. But that's a whole different conversation for the rest of us out here. Within 2 hours, there should be significant carbohydrates and protein. The biggest thing is the more cardio you do, the more carbs you need. And then also the more you sweat, the more salt and water you need. And so for someone like a basketball player, one, right after a game, you probably feel too sick to eat. And the reason is because you're dehydrated. Your intestinal tract is like a giant water slide. And so when you're dehydrated, your body doesn't have water in the intestine. And so that means anything that's going to sit in your stomach, it's going to be stuck at the top of the water slide waiting to go down. It's going to feel real nauseating. So step one, we need salt and water. That's where Gatorade comes into play. Give yourself water, salt, sugar. That will wake up the intestines, that'll wake up the stomach, that'll tell your body you're recovering, it'll allow adrenaline to pump out, cortisol to go down, it'll put you in recovery mode. Within an hour of sipping that fluid, you'll start to notice an appetite. You'll make room for some sort of consumption. And then by that hour to 2 hour range, we should be getting a meal in. Ideally, it is a good dose of carbs, and then it's a solid protein. For most people, you don't need more than 50 grams of protein. We'll call it 20 to 40 as a general range. Carbohydrate-wise, it's going to be closer to that 80 to 120, depending on duration and then also size of person. And so you got to be thinking like they talk about the 4-to-1 ratio in cardio, 4 parts carb to 1 part protein. That's not a terrible rule of thumb. Is like 20 protein, 80 carb, 30 protein, 120 carb. Somewhere in that range you want to land. That's going to make sure the muscles get the carbs they need to basically replenish themselves and the protein that they need to repair themselves.
Okay, so just a little recap. Directly after a game, you would want something like a Gatorade or a sports drink or a Body Armor, something with sodium and sugar and carbohydrates, and that'll kind of open up that intestinal tract to be ready for you to eat.
Yep.
And then about an hour, you'll be hungry for some protein and some carbohydrates, an actual meal. Mm-hmm. Is there any negative effects of getting fats with that meal?
So it slows down the food and it's less likely to be tolerated. And so you're not going to feel as good if you do. So ideally it is a lower fat meal just because it's going to help. It's going to sit better. You're going to be able to eat it sooner. It's going to sound appetizing sooner. Fatty foods tend to repel your appetite when you're that close to an intense workout. And it's going to delay it. So while if it has fats in it, it's not like to be concerned, but it's to say that you're better off with more protein and protein and carb focus. Real quick note I will say out loud is that Body Armor is actually a really shitty source of sodium. It's more potassium. So while I like Body Armors as a beverage, I don't love them as a post-workout because you don't actually sweat out a lot of potassium. You sweat mostly salt. And so we actually really want to think about like the Body Armors can be good like hydration during the day. Post-workout, it needs to be salty. And so we definitely want to be thinking more the Gatorade, more the Powerade. Prime is a new brand that's come out more recently. I will say vitamin waters have almost no sodium. Body Armor has very limited sodium. Some people like Liquid IV. That's a new popular one. It's like the little packets. And then you can play around with like an Element. LMNT is the brand. They're like a high sodium. Half a packet of that could work really well. But it's just making sure the salt. So if you have a question, turn it over, and I want no less than 250 milligrams of sodium in that. It needs to be minimum that. When you sweat out 2 pounds of water, you lose 500 milligrams of sodium, and you're sweating at least that out if you're doing a good run of basketball.
Okay, so no less than
250
milligrams of sodium.
Yep.
In that drink directly after your game, and then carbohydrates and proteins in your next solid meal as soon as you can within the hour is better than having carbohydrates, proteins, and fats.
Exactly.
And then in your next meal after that, whenever that happens to be, you can add your fats
normal meal. Exactly. Okay. And that's where some people might find they drink the sports beverage within an hour or two of the workout. They're hungry or ready, but they might not want like a fulfilling meal. And that's where like you could take like a Core Power, like a Fairlife, like protein shake and pour it over cereal and just have like cereal and protein. Or you could have some Greek yogurt with some cereal or like granola and fruit added to it. So it doesn't have to be like this big filling meal. We want carbs and protein. And so if you're somebody that doesn't have a big appetite in the 2 hours after a game, think lighter type stuff. I know the one brand Ghost that everyone loves. They have a ready to drink, an RTD, and they also have a powder for that matter. It's called cereal milk. And it tastes like cereal milk when we were kids that you would drink at the end of a cereal. You could take like Cheerios or Chex or Life and pour cereal milk protein over it. It tastes absolutely delicious. It's sweet. It's going to go down a little easier than like a rice bowl. And then, as you said, a couple hours later, maybe get that rice bowl.
Okay. Great. I love that.